2, 3, 4.
Good morning, my brothers and sisters. This is your host, Lucas Ham, the Brazilian mountaineer, alongside Marc Boucher, the man with music in his heart and Doctor Who on his brain. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right. It's a bonus episode, man.
That's right. Bonus. Not only is it a bonus, it's a night show.
True story.
True story. Folks, we are joining you right now to talk all things Spider-Man. Are you excited?
I'm excited, man.
I am. You know, I can't tell you how much I have to fight the temptation to sing the Spider-Man song here at the beginning.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Spider. No, okay, I'm done.
Spider does whatever a spider can, spins his web and cut. I was thinking earlier today, I was like, do they have a NDA, not an NDA, non-disclosure agreement? No, that's not right. Do they have, someone has copyrights on that, right?
Of course.
Marvel?
You better believe that thing has copyrights slapped all over it.
You know, really, the version that I know, not I know the best, but the version I always think of when I think of that song is the version from, I can't remember if it's the first or second Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire when that Asian lady is singing.
Spider-Man,
she's on the street. Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Exactly. Does whatever a spider can. That's the version that I always think of now, even to this day. I heard the other versions in the past, but that's the one that sticks. Well, we are talking about Spider-Man today. We are doing our first official GMG Good Morning Guys Spoilercast. Ronnie and Patrick are also going to be doing a Red Dead Redemption Spoilercast at some point. I don't know when or where. Somewhere in Cincinnati. But these are our first goes at a Spoilercast. So we're going to be talking about Spider-Man on PS4. Recently, Mark and I finished the game. You haven't platinumed it yet, right?
Negative.
I
just mainlined the story. I may go back to it. I probably will go back to it, but right now I'm trying to finish God of War, and then after that I'm doing Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and then if I got some downtime, you know, I may go back to the extra stuff, and I also kind of want to play the DLC stuff.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that.
Yeah, so I would like to try that, especially if it has more story stuff. Because I very much enjoyed being in this world.
Oh yeah, what Insomniac, what they built is an incredible world. It's a vibrant world. I know that for those from New York City who have spent much time in New York City, of course, it's not 1-to-1, it's not exact, but the world they built in this game was incredible and incredibly fun to be in. Swinging around as Spider-Man, I mean, there's nothing like it. Mm-hmm. Like we've talked about in the podcast before, and you just mentioned, talking about how you're kind of mainlining some games because you really want to experience them and get through them, and you've been a little bit behind, but man, that there's nothing like swinging around the city. It's amazing. Did you have much experience before with Spider-Man games before this?
I did actually. I actually played the original one. I believe it's on PS1.
Yeah, I want to say that's the last one I actually played was the PS1. I read about the other ones, but I didn't play the others.
Gotcha. Yeah, I played the original one, the PS1 version. I think there was one they actually came out with on like the Sega Genesis that had to do with Carnage.
Oh, yes.
Long way ago.
Yeah, that's way far back. I played that one too, actually. That was more of a beat-em-up, side-scroller kind of deal.
But I think the one that I enjoyed the most before Insomniac put their Spider-Man game out was actually, I believe it was 2005, I want to say, or something like that. They actually released a movie tie-in game for Spider-Man 2. And Yeah, and it actually had a lot of the game mechanics in that game that it does in Insomniac. Insomniac just did it way better.
Right.
But it had very much. It wasn't a 1-to-1 New York. But it was very much open world, and you could swing around and all that kind of stuff, and just do whatever you wanted to do, and then go into story missions and stuff like that. And I've very much enjoyed that, because I've always enjoyed just the free swinging open world kind of thing, of just going and just being Spider-Man, doing whatever you want to do, having optional missions and stuff like that. And Insomniac just kind of took that and brought it to its maximum potential, I think.
For sure, most certainly, they definitely did. I think the last one that I really enjoyed was Spider-Man, where I really felt the fun of swinging around the city, was Lego Marvel Superheroes. That was the last one. That was a fun one, let me tell you. Being able to, there was nothing realistic about the physics or how he could send his webs into a cloud, and it would help him swing in any direction in any place. So in that sense, it was not very realistic, but it was still fun to swing around as Spider-Man.
Yeah,
for sure. So this old Spider-Man on PS4, it came out on September 7th, but we were slackers, weren't we? We didn't play it right away.
Slackers!
My story is that I just did not have any money, and I was not willing to pay full price at the time. And what was your excuse?
I really don't have one, other than I just sort of dropped it, and a lot of times
that old
like
blackout in Call of Duty and Overwatch distracted you, huh?
That did, but also just like the fact, like when I come home a lot of days, it's kind of funny. Like I got into this habit of like watching things like Twitch and stuff like that, watching other people play video games, but like I wasn't really playing a whole lot of video games myself.
Right.
And that was just kind of my way of chilling out after getting off of work, and then I'd like pass out and fall asleep. And it happens. Just was like a couple of months of doing that, and I just never got myself motivated enough to get back into it, until finally I was like kicking myself, like, you need to finish this game, please. So, so you have a much better excuse than I did.
But it was good timing. It was really cool. I thought that it was really cool that we kind of, we played it parallel to each other. It's a single-player game, so we couldn't play it together, but at the same time, we were playing it around the same time, kind of experiencing it. And now I think it's really cool that we can get together and we can talk about it, kind of share spoilers, of course, talk about all the things that happened, things that surprised us, or things that we enjoyed. I definitely think there were times when the game tried to hit you in the feels, and it was pretty effective. And so we'll kind of try to cover all that. Sound good?
Yeah, we should probably say that right now. If the name Spoilercast wasn't any indication whatsoever, we're gonna spoil the game here. We're gonna spoil the crap out of it.
That is very true. So this is your last chance to bail. We appreciate you coming by, but if you are not interested in hearing spoilers, if you hope to play this game someday, you need to turn this off, because you need to experience this game fresh, without any spoilers. Really experience it and just experience the journey without knowing anything. However, if you've already played it, or you don't really care about spoilers, if you want to kind of go on the journey with us for the next little bit, you're of course welcome to do that too, because we're going to just dive right in to talk about Spider-Man on PS4. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. I tell you what, this game, I thought it started out strong. It starts out with you taking down old Mr. Fisk, Kingpin himself, and then during that time it also doubles as a tutorial where you learn all your moves, learn how to web sling, shoot webs, dance around, punch, kick, all that fun stuff. What did you think of the combat system overall? Not just at the beginning, but as things progressed. What did you like? What did you dislike? What did you think about it?
You could tell very much that Insomniac kind of took their cues, kind of took their inspiration from the Arkham games.
Yeah,
in
definitely.
terms of the combat style, this sort of quick combat back and forth in between different enemies, and sort of rapid sort of kick and punch attacks while being able to, swing. And I think there's actually it's very similar, where you can like throw the enemy up in the air and just kind of unload a whole bunch of
punch them in the air and then
it's very much reminiscent of Arkham, of all those games. There's a moment where you can all of a sudden Batman can just kind of unleash this flurry of punches and kicks.
Yeah.
And so you can tell they were very inspired by it. And I loved the Arkham games. So naturally I was cool with the dynamics, the gameplay, the combat dynamics of the game, and just also being able to swing on webs and stuff was very natural to me, just because I had played that type of gameplay before. So I'm like, okay, this is like riding a bike except swinging webs.
There was one thing that I really appreciated about the combat. They made I felt like they definitely had inspiration from the Arkham games, but it felt like they made a couple tweaks that really, for me, made it, I don't know if I'd say it made it easier, but it felt more intuitive. Like, for example, whenever you were about to be attacked, instead of the like little flashy warning going across the certain enemy's head that was attacking you, it always came on Spider-Man, like his spider sense. So you could usually just hit X, you could hit dodge, and he would automatically dodge. Like with the Batman games, you had to pay attention to each enemy, and you didn't know which enemy was going to kind of light up and kind of warn you that they were about to attack you, and I really liked that. The other thing I liked was that when you were fighting, it didn't have that almost artificial automatic movement to every single enemy. Like in Arkham, the Arkham games, you could sometimes just hit square, and he would automatically jump around the group of enemies, and he would like Batman would slide across the ground, and sometimes that was very like strange, because it almost felt very like he had ice skates on. He was sliding to an enemy. With Spider-Man, you didn't have that. Instead, you'd hit triangle, and he would throw out a web, and he would pull himself towards the enemy, or he would pull the enemy towards him. And I really liked that relationship you had with your webs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah, in addition to that, I loved, and they introduced this, little by little as time went on. I loved the gadgets. I really got into the gadgets a lot, and that kind of stuff. So let's take a little time before we continue on with the story. What were some of your favorite gadgets that were used, and what was your fighting style? What did you feel like you kind of leaned towards in terms of fighting and the gadgets that you liked the best?
I tend to be in a lot of in a lot of games. I tend to be like a run and gun type of person. Like I will run in there and just do my business and wreck house as much as possible. I'm not a big fan of like stealth or anything like that.
Right.
Games like Spider-Man, and you're gonna hear me talking about Batman a lot, because number one, I love Batman. Number two, there's just a lot of things to compare in terms of the Arkham series. But
and even before this Spider-Man, I mean, there weren't really a lot of superhero games of this style that were that great, or were like it's such a level that they were revered by gamers. I think the Arkham games are the pinnacle of this style of third-person Superman. There I go with Superman. Superhero video games. Why do I always want to call them Superman games? Superhero games.
Spider-Man is the best Superman game. So
that is true. I'm in works with Insomniac to get that put on the Game of the Year edition. Put that on the box. So, anywho, what kind of gadgets did you like to use? Did you have any preferred?
Basically, I was big on the electric webs and the impact web.
Man, those impact webs, I always depleted those right at the beginning. You just see anybody near a wall, and you just doo.
Yeah, it just takes care of them.
Yeah,
especially in like larger groups, where you're just trying to clear the area as much as possible, and they're like all on top of you and stuff. It's like the quickest way to dispose of them was, instead of just trying to knock them out or whatever, you just impact web them as much as possible.
For sure.
I definitely use the web bomb, where like it would like impact 3 to 5 different enemies at a time. That was something I used a lot. I didn't didn't do a lot of like upgrading of the particular gadgets, like the spider drone or anything like that.
Yeah, I stopped once I realized it was going to take away my challenge tokens.
Oh yeah.
I didn't. You mentioned earlier about platinuming because I asked you, but I didn't mention I am going to platinum the game. And one of the things you have to do is get so many suits or get all the main suits, and most of those suits require challenge tokens. And if you use too many challenge tokens on other things, then you have to like perfect the challenges that come up later on, where you're chasing drones and man, those challenges were tough. I haven't done a lot of them, but the ones I did, I was lucky sometimes to get I don't remember what the names were, but the silver ones. I never got a gold on anything. I haven't gotten a gold one yet. The ultimate, ultimate challenge results. But for me, I also really liked to jump into a group of guys, and I used the suit power Web Blossom. Did you use that very much?
I don't think I did.
Oh man, it was actually a suit power. So with each suit that you got, because there were a bunch of suits, and we can talk about the suits that we liked and that kind of stuff too. But throughout the game, you would unlock all these different suits. Some of them from comics, some of them from movies, some of them from made by Insomniac, like designed for the game. But with each suit comes a suit power. And my favorite suit power was the Web Blossom, because you could get into a group of like 20 guys, and you'd press L3, R3, and he would jump in the air and just spin, and just like he would spray webs everywhere. And it was like a web bomb on steroids. Like you would take out
I did use that.
2/3 of the guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I used that most of the game. Like that was easily my favorite suit power. And I didn't really have a preferred suit. I would just wear a suit until I kind of got bored with it, and then I would change to a new suit. I think towards the end, I started using the white one, or the one that Insomniac made with the white trim. I think they called it the white spider suit, just because it matched best with the cutscenes. So, because I think one time I was using a weird suit, and there was a cutscene, and I was wearing it, and it was hard for me to take the scene very seriously because I looked like an idiot. So, I started paying attention and just being like, I'm just going to use the standard suit.
Yeah, that's basically what I did was I really haven't unlocked very many of the suits. I've unlocked some of them, of course, but I would play around with them a little bit, and like, oh man, that's cool. I remember that suit from X comic or whatever,
Right.
or whatever movie, but then I ended up going back to the white spider suit, just because that's the one that Insomniac intended for the game itself.
Yeah, that's true.
So I just liked to stick with that. And honestly, I was a little underwhelmed by some of the suits. A lot of them, like, they're very obscure. Like, okay, this doesn't matter. And honestly, like one of the big things that's kind of been that Insomniac's kind of gotten a little bit of heat about is apparently like they've now named all of the suits that are going to be in the game, and one of them that is not going to be in the game is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man suit. I was kind of surprised at that. People were not very happy about that. It's like all the suits you put in there, and you couldn't put the one movie suit in there. But a lot of the other ones were like, this isn't that great. So I didn't really go crazy with the suits. I did see the one you can unlock by like 100%ing it, and that's like the Spider-Man he's like wearing the underwear or whatever, and he's like it's just him wearing the mask.
The mask, yeah.
Yeah. And it's the guy that he's in the in that one scene. I think he's like hallucinating or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And he's in like Spider-Man underwear.
Oh, yes. I've seen that.
Yeah, he's an unlockable suit.
Yeah, that's not something I want to look at while I'm playing a third-person
really.
game where I have to look at their body all the time. Not so much.
Yeah.
It is interesting you brought up the Raimi suit. I think this story was so heavily influenced, I thought, by the Raimi movies.
Absolutely.
That they really should have. And you know what? This isn't the first game, so I would not be surprised if not in the second game, third game, that they maybe do a suit, because they can't reveal their whole hand. And I think definitely as we go through the story, as we progress through the story and get to the end and kind of make predictions for the future, I definitely think they have left some great potential for a good, at least another, if not two, to make a whole trilogy of games for Spider-Man. They have built a great universe with this game. So returning back to the story, Fisk gets put into jail. That's your first mission in the game, is to beat up Fisk and put him in jail. And when he's being put in jail, he alludes to the fact that he's going to be missed, because he pretty much says the city is going to deteriorate. It's going to get worse without him, because it's kind of like that whole idea. You kind of like that Hydra problem. You cut off one head, two more raise in its place, and you can kind of see that that's going to be coming. And of course, we discover that to be true not long after that. And after he finishes off with Fisk, you find out that Peter is late for his real job as a scientist working under the tutelage of Dr. Otto Octavius, who we know will someday become Doc Ock. But to this point, he has not become Doc Ock yet. He's Otto Octavius, a really nice, laid-back scientist that's just looking to help people designing prosthetic limbs. We also discover at this point that it's been 7 or 8 years into Peter Parker's career as Spider-Man. And so there's lots of established enemies already, like Shocker and some other enemies. But Doc Ock, we also know that the Osborns at this point. I think during this part of the game we discover too that the Osborns are just normal guys, like Harry Osborn is his friend. It's pre-Green Goblin, all that.
Pre-Green Goblin, which I found to be interesting.
And so there's a good mix of villains that have been revealed. And of course, if you get all the backpacks, if you get like half the backpacks like I did after the first or second mission, I started just grabbing backpacks, and you learn a lot about the different enemies, villains he's already faced, like Sandman and some others. But at this point, the really big villains, I think, Doc Ock and Green Goblin, they have not appeared yet. And so what did you think of this opening introduction with Parker and Octavius?
It was interesting, the fact that, Spider-Man has been Spider-Man for 8 years, and yet, Otto is still very much Otto. He's not Doc Ock. Yep. He's not one of his established enemies yet. They pushed this one way off. And it's nice to have a well-established Spider-Man, because the more established Spider-Man you have, the better gadgets you have, and all that kind of stuff. It was interesting that that's how they wanted the story to go. But yeah, I liked the introduction to this. I loved, again, the whole idea of Kingpin, and the way that he got him put away, and the fact that Fisk basically was kind of the muscle of the city. He had and the money for the city as well. He basically had his hand in pulling the strings for all sorts of different crime syndicates and stuff, and he would keep them in balance.
Yep.
So yeah, it basically was like you're taking the mastermind of that out of the picture, so it's gonna make things a lot harder.
Yeah, created a villain vacuum where others were going to replace him, and they definitely did. With Otto, I really enjoyed overall throughout the story the mentor-mentee relationship between Parker and Octavius. I thought it was really well done. The development of their characters as individuals and in relation to each other was really cool. I immediately harkened back to Spider-Man 2 with the whole Doc Ock, and in that they don't really work together as scientists. Dr. Octavius is already well established, and Peter isn't even a scientist in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, but he very much immortalizes him. He definitely sees him as like a good example and that kind of stuff. So there's a similarity in that I thought was really cool. But in the game, I really thought it was cool that Octavius really couldn't advance his goals without Parker. Like the times he had breakthroughs, it was obvious that Octavius was smart, but every breakthrough, every discovery, every development during the game, you see Parker there, and he's helping him out. He's encouraging him. Sometimes he makes a little tweak, fixes something. And I thought it was really cool, not just because of their relationship, but because you seem to have a more intimate connection with who he becomes. Like, he pretty much becomes Doc Ock because of you. And we'll get into more of that later, but I just thought that whole relationship was really well done. That was one of my favorite aspects of the game for sure.
Yeah, the moment I saw them working on the whole like prosthetic arm thing, and I'm like, okay, he's gonna become Doc Ock by the time this is done.
Oh yeah, that was pretty obvious, but the way they did it was so good.
Oh yeah, they definitely did the slow burn with it, and it was interesting the path that they went. But it's like the moment I saw that any sort of thing to do with prosthetic arms of any time, I'm like, okay, we're going full Doc Ock at one point.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I liked the fact with a lot of the interactions with Peter and Otto, they gave you the time, and Insomniac did this a lot in this game. You have these high action missions that you go on. It's like, okay, you need a little bit of a break, a little bit of a cool down, so it's not constantly action like it would be in a movie. They kind of have to have downtime and then build up the action and that kind of stuff. So you'd have like these mini missions where it's like, okay, there's this one piece of tech that's kind of on the fritz and the voltage isn't right and so you've got to kind of fix it, and so it kind of takes your mind and your emotions in a different direction and kind of gives you a little cool down time. So that was pretty neat when it's basically Peter helping Otto along with the research for the prosthetic arms, and just trying to get it down right in terms of kicking out the bugs and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's true. Not long after this, of course, we meet Aunt May, and we also meet Martin Lee. Which, if you had seen any material, any trailers, anything beforehand, you knew about Mr. Negative, and it was pretty clear right away that Martin Lee was Mr. Negative. There was no moment where it's like, what? Martin Lee is Mr. Negative? But you meet Martin Lee, and you discover that he's like the director of this homeless shelter called Feast, where they help people out. Aunt May is like his right-hand woman, and they definitely, again, they try to, I really like this, we'll talk about this more later as we get towards the end of the story, but I really liked how they tried to make some kind of connection with you and the villains. It wasn't just like you're fighting these villains because they want to do evil things. Like, they really humanized them. They really drew from, not just good versus evil, but they drew from anguish and sadness and difficulty, and how everybody deals with something in a different way. And oftentimes the difference between the heroes and villains are not what they've been through. We've all been through hard times. It's what they do with that. And so I thought it was really cool that, as they're introducing these characters, they're trying to make you make a connection with all of them, not just the good ones, and then making you fight the bad ones. I thought it was a good mixture.
Yeah, it was nice that Mr. Negative is more than your typical, like, mustache twirling, like, I am evil kind of thing. He was a complex character with, his own motivations for why he was doing what he was doing, and a pretty horrible backstory.
Oh yeah,
I say horrible, like messed up, not like they
did
that job.
Because and we can jump around, just to tell people, I think, or just to mention it when it's brought up. But he was experimented on by the Osborne Corporation, like as a child, and his parents were killed through those experiments, and so he pretty much hates Osborne, in which that definitely comes into play in a little bit in the story. But yeah, that was an interesting twist, I guess, as it were. After this, we're also introduced to Mary Jane Watson, MJ, Peter's ex-girlfriend, which I thought it was interesting to, as a first chapter or the first part of a new story, of a new take on Spider-Man, that you start the story with MJ as your ex. I thought that was very interesting. They're not together. They dated. They had a history. You don't really know why things are the way they are, but it's very obvious at the beginning that they actually hadn't been talking for a long time, for months. And towards the beginning of the story, they actually start talking again, but only for the connection of dealing with the issues that are going on, the things that are going on with Kingpin leaving, and then through MJ, we discover we're introduced to the demons. She breaks into an auction house where they're going to be selling Fisk paraphernalia, and they introduce the demons. We also learn about some kind of something called Devil's Breath. We don't know what it is at the time, which we find out later is an accidental creation by Oscorp, because they wanted to make a substance that could cure diseases, and instead it makes a super disease. And so Spider-Man and Peter Parker start working with MJ, and they start talking, hanging out. You get some of that mix between, I think, kind of a mystery crime buddy cop kind of deal between the two. I think you get that towards the beginning, and then they kind of pepper in a little bit of rom-com or a little bit of, they kind of have that spark, the chemistry. What did you think of the chemistry between MJ and Peter Parker?
Well, in the comics and in the movies and any sort of media with Spider-Man, it's always an on and off, on and off, on and off.
Yeah.
Because they have to, like, the people who are doing the comics or the games and the movies, they know who these people are.
Yeah.
They know all about Spider-Man and Mary Jane, and they're supposed to be together, and so they kind of have to make things interesting and play with the dynamic there. And so to start out with a strain between the two, it's like, okay, so how are we going to get them back to the point where they're together again?
Right.
And it's certainly the whole game, like, there's certainly like highs and lows and highs and lows. Where
sure.
They got some issues going on.
Yeah.
But
they definitely had good. I thought they had good chemistry together. Like the, I think his name's Yuri, the voice actor Yuri, and
yep,
Laura
Bailey.
Laura Bailey is they like their relationship, their vocal relationship and chemistry. I thought was very good.
Oh, they were very much a modern 21st century on and off couple, basically.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting. that MJ was a reporter instead of a model too, because most of the time in the past she's always been a model, never been very participative, other than being like a damsel in distress for Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I think that's the culture we're in now. Where a lot of women don't necessarily want to be the damsel in distress. They want to actually have a role to play, which is great. Because they don't want to be one-dimensional like that. And so the fact that not only they gave her a reporter job, but also her and other characters in the game are more than just NPCs.
Yeah, for sure.
They are actual playable characters for their own missions. So that was interesting, and it was another way that Insomniac, gives a little cooldown time. Well, it's like, okay, we're not doing high-flying, swinging action as Spider-Man after a big mission, but we're gonna sneak around a little bit as Mary Jane, and we're gonna do some investigating and all that kind of stuff, and it really built the story up that way.
It did.
So
it was kind of weird sometimes when you were, dancing around as Spider-Man, all powerful and gadgets and powers, and then all of a sudden you're like this feeble little human and you're sneaking around. I will say the missions were not as annoying as I thought they would be. When they first made me, I think in the auction house, when they first made me MJ, I'm like, oh gosh, I have like no powers. I can't fight. I just have to do this little sneaking mission. It kind of reminded me of Uncharted 4 at the beginning, when you're in the orphanage and you have to get around the nuns and the priest and all that and try to sneak out to see your brother.
For sure.
But I didn't think they were that bad, and I thought they were okay. I think some people had some issues with them, towards the middle or towards the end when they got a little harder. But I thought overall they were fine in kind of building the world and making those what could have just been NPCs. They made them real characters, like they were a part of your experience for sure. In this, we're also introduced to another character, Officer Jefferson Davis. In your investigations, you're helped by a cop. Did you know right away that he would be Miles Morales' dad?
I did not, honestly. I've seen iterations where Miles Morales' dad was a cop. I think actually Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is out today.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. I've heard that's very good.
He's a cop in that movie.
Uh-huh.
I've not read all the stories on Miles Morales' Spider-Man. I'm familiar with some of his backstory. But no, I did not know at first that this was going to be Miles' dad. And so
right.
I liked that dynamic there, that, Spider-Man actually had an emotional attachment to this particular character, and it serves as sort of the catalyst for Peter meeting Miles, as
exactly.
I'm sure we'll get into it in a moment. But
yep.
I'm glad that there's a cop that was there respecting what Spider-Man was trying to do, and trying to do his job as much as possible. So, but yeah, I liked the progression there of that character.
Yeah, I think I've been around the block so many times in terms of stories and, reading comics, watching movies. I really enjoy stories, but really good stories still follow the same. They still follow the same like parameters, the same principles, the hero's journey. More often than not, like my gut tells me, okay, this person's gonna die, this person's gonna live, this person's gonna be. And when I met Jefferson, like they hit it off so well. At one point, the Jefferson saves Spider-Man's life. And it was during those interactions like, okay, this is Miles Morales' dad. And part of it was, racial profiling. He was African American, and I knew Miles Morales was a mix between Hispanic and African American. So I knew that relationship from the comics. So I was like, this is probably, even though it's not the same last name, I have a feeling. And then I also knew he was going to die. Like before they even had the parade and all that stuff, he worked so well with Spider-Man. I'm like, this is too good to be true. And I really kind of wanted to have more missions where we could do more buddy cop stuff. And like, he's like, well, I need to get in this. And Spider-Man's like, oh, let me look for this thing, and then we'll work together. I think that would have been cool. But unfortunately, it does not come to fruition, because in saving Spider-Man's life and in helping to kind of take down some of the safe houses and kind of uncover some things about the demons, Osborn decides to have a press conference / honoring of Jefferson Davis for his service to the city. And in the process, Senor Negativo shows up, and he shows up and wreaks havoc on the city. Like they literally do a terrorist attack, and in the process, in collateral damage, Davis gets killed. And it's also revealed that Mr. Negative has a vendetta against Osborn. At this point, you discover that. And we also discover that Davis was the father of Miles Morales. And so with this transition, because of Peter's emotional attachment, Spider-Man's emotional attachment to Jefferson Davis, the officer, he gets an attachment to Miles. They start to kind of interact. He helps get him to work with Feast. And in the process, Spider-Man and MJ continue investigating Mr. Negative and Martin Lee, of course. They uncover a bunch of different things. While they're doing this, they introduce new bad guys into the fray as Mayor Osborn hires Silver Sable and her soldiers. I almost said her shoulders. I mean, Osborn does hire her shoulders. Her shoulders and her soldiers. So with Silver Sable, she does not play nice with Spider-Man, which is not a big surprise. I really liked her intro, just kind of jumping in and being like, Spider-Man, I'm going to take care of this. I'm in charge. I really didn't know very much about Silver Sable before, so I don't know how much she is in line with the comics. I only knew her name, and that was about it. Did you know anything about her before?
I honestly, I've heard of Silver Sable. They're actually, I believe, planning on making a movie specifically with Silver Sable and Black Cat.
Oh, okay.
So I'd heard the name, but I don't know all that backstory on her. So yeah, my knowledge was very limited, but I was like, oh yeah, I've heard that name, and that's about it.
That was pretty much where I was coming from. But she, it was, in terms of story, it made sense because, they were making some progress, and that's not fun if they just automatically get to, the fight with Mr. Negative. You got to add a few more wrinkles, make things interesting, so it made sense with the story. But eventually, of course, Spider-Man saves the day with the help of MJ and other people, and they imprison Mr. Negative, and peace is secured, at least temporarily. Of course, when you're playing the game, it's not going to last, because that things are going to, something's going to happen. There's going to be like we did it, and then the straw hits the camel's back and something else bigger happens. But before we got into that, a lot of times during these missions when you'd have kind of big things, you talked about earlier about the transitions and about, doing stealth missions and doing the science missions or the science side projects. There were also a ton of side missions and collectibles in this game. Backpacks.
For sure.
Pigeons. You collect pigeons at some point, helping Lee from The Walking Dead to catch his wife's pigeons. It's a very touching story when you finish the whole thing, because you're like collecting these pigeons for his dead wife and for him and in memory of his wife that's passed away. But there were a ton of collectibles, and I loved every single one of them. Like, the challenge tokens were tough, but I loved how all the collectibles and all the side missions, like, everything seemed to be connected. And I thought it was really fun. Did you have a side mission or collectible that you enjoyed in particular?
Oh, I went straight to the backpacks.
Like, I know, right?
Got all what was it, 40 backpacks or whatever? Yeah. Hey, so Rocksteady, don't do any more freaking Riddler trophies.
Please, no more Riddler trophies. Gosh, those Riddler trophies.
Make it fun.
Yeah, exactly. And
it was awesome. It was awesome because Insomniac did a great job of, it was a collectible mission, but and they were just little trinkets, which would just tell an entire story.
Yep.
Just from this one little thing that you found, one little item.
I thought that was so cool. It was
telling story without you seeing it.
Yep.
Basically.
Yep. I really enjoyed those, and the sheer variety of collectibles was cool, and I really liked. I actually collected a lot of the backpacks with my son. It was really cool, and he would be like, "What's that, Dad?" And I want to get a backpack, and he really got into it. Did you do many of the side missions?
I started to. I did go through quite a bit, like the research stations. And
yeah, I did.
Obviously the backpacks and there were like different towers you had to turn on and stuff like that. And so, when I first started playing the game, I was like, okay, this isn't too bad. It's because a lot of times with side missions, it gets very overwhelming and not interesting. And so when I first started playing the game, I was interested. I was like, okay, this isn't too overwhelming. And then I put the game down for a couple of months, as you know.
Right.
And then I picked it back up again. And I remember when listening to an episode of Married to the Games where Chris McCracken was talking about, like, he's like, oh, okay, I thought I was done with all these side missions, but now there's more.
Oh, yeah.
And I started feeling that.
Yeah.
I started feeling like, okay, I'm kind of overwhelmed at the moment with the amount of collectible things.
Yes.
And those collectible things are the things that help me unlock suits. And so I was kind of bummed because I was like, okay, I got to go through all of this just to unlock suits.
Yeah.
And so that's when it gets annoying to me. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to mainline the story at this point. I might go back to it. I feel like I would. But yeah, at that point, it was just kind of overwhelming to me with how much stuff I had to do.
Yeah,
how
for
much
sure.
Stuff I had to collect.
Especially if you like, if I think the perfect way to play this game is to do a mission and then do a few collectible side missions. Do a mission, do a few because if you like, the second half I started a mainline because I also felt kind of the pressure of the end of the year, wanting to play also God of War. And I really just wanted to see the story play out. And so the second half, I just flew through the main line, and all those collectibles just build up because you get more crimes and you get more things happening. And all of a sudden, like, your screen is just covered in stuff. And I think if you do like a little bit, if you have the time, if you just kind of hop around, especially with the crimes, if you're looking to platinum this game, my recommendation is that you never skip a crime. Like, when those crimes pop up, you do them, no matter what. Because I've heard too many people at the end, they want to do the platinum because they love the game or they want to get more collectibles. And those crimes just don't pop up very fast. Like, they pop up almost organically in terms of you're swinging around, traveling, and then they'll pop up once. But then they won't just pop up again on command. And so you definitely just want to do those crimes every chance you get. Because there are a lot of them, lots of crimes. You have Sable crimes, you have prisoner crimes, you have demon crimes, you have fist crimes. Like, it's like, geez, New York City has a lot of crimes, which we knew that anyways.
Well,
but
yeah,
it's the big.
I was gonna say,
yeah, we kind of knew getting into it that it was like that. But going back to the story, so we have kind of a momentary piece. Peter rejoins Otto to kind of help him continue the process with the prosthetics. I think sometime before this, Oscorp, there was a prior relationship between Otto and Osborn, and they were actually continuing to fund, kind of as like a third party, what Otto was doing, but they lose that funding. Like, Osborn takes it away, and in the process, this kind of builds the animosity and reveals the past relationship and the current animosity that Otto has for Osborn. But then later, Otto finds new funding, and he finds creative ways to get money. And Peter continues to help him. In the process of this also, Otto is the first one other than MJ to find out, well, not to find out who Spider-Man is, or at least so we think, but finds out Peter's connection to Spider-Man. So I thought that was an interesting little reveal partway through the story. Also, they reveal that Otto has a degenerative disease, and it becomes clear what his motive is. Besides helping people with prosthetics, he's also working to kind of build himself a way to continue to live and continue to operate when his arms and body have given out. And so it becomes very clear I thought it was very clear once they revealed that degenerative disease that was going to be one of his motivations to become Doc Ock. And through that, his limits are pushed. Peter enables him and helps him, tries to help him. Doc Ock starts to get into kind of like the brain stuff and wants to mess with the brain to kind of connect his prosthetics directly to the brain, and in the process that exposes his anger and exposes his hatred for Osborn. Peter tries to help him, but as we experience through the game, Otto's hate, kind of like Lee's hate for Osborn, is too strong, and then we get to the prison break at the raft.
Oh, yes we do.
Yes, we do. Now, I will say I was a little disappointed in leading up to this game that they revealed this prison break at the raft in the trailers. I thought it was a little too much. They should have saved it for the game, because I thought this whole mission where you go to the raft and all of a sudden Electro, Scorpion, Mr. Negative, who else? Rhino. That's 4. Who's the
Vulture.
5th one? Vulture, thank you. Those guys break out, and you're like, oh my gosh, everybody's breaking out. The city's kind of falling apart. Bedlam has all of a sudden, it's gone from like 0 to 60 in 0.2 seconds.
Yeah, and there's like there's a breakout before the breakout, because you get those inmates on Rikers that break out.
Yeah. It's like a domino effect.
That was a pain in the butt for me. I hated that. The whole Rikers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
that was. For some reason crazy. I kept dying at that part for some reason. But
oh really?
Yeah, I think it was mainly because of the grunts, like the big dudes, the big prisoners that would always get in my way, and they were just so relentless.
Yeah, anytime you got into a group where there were two grunts or two like fat guys that were pretty much like Fisk, I had a hard time sometimes with those guys. They were relentless, and they would just punch your face in and take your health bar would just drop really fast with them.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, I gotta take the little guys out so then I can focus on the big guy, and it's just really frustrating. But yeah,
for sure.
Then obviously you get to the raft breakout where you get the formation of the Sinister Six.
Yep, it is revealed. So, since it was kind of, I felt like they spoiled it in the trailer. How did you feel about that moment when they revealed the Sinister Six?
It was underwhelming, the fact that like I knew what was going on with 5 of the 6, but then
exactly,
in the initial trailers they kind of trailed off like, oh, it's you, and you didn't know.
You didn't know for sure.
Was. Yeah.
Now, so once you're playing the game, you just know it's Doc Ock. Like once he gets angry and he starts making that transition to Crazy Man, you just know. Like going back to that trailer, then you're like, oh, it's him. That's the only thing that makes sense, and of course, it's him. So they reveal the Sinister Six, and then this is when you get to Act 3 of the game, and I both enjoyed, and I wouldn't say I struggled with Act 3, but I felt like Act 3 overall, I felt like you could really fly through Act 3 and just do the boss fights and get to the end and be done. I think that, up until this point, I felt like Act 1 and 2, like all the things that happened, it played out like a movie, and they made you like kind of take in all the information. I felt like Act 3, once you got to the Sinister Six reveal, they kind of take over the city. You're injured, but then of course MJ, Miles Morales, they all kind of work together, and then it just becomes a mix of boss fights and kind of motive revelations. And there's really good information during Act 3. Like you find out motivations for each of the different Sinister Six. I thought that was really cool when you kind of find Doc Ock's lair, and you find out like the motivations why each of them decided to work with Doc Ock. Like Vulture has cancer. Rhino just wants to get out of the suit that he's in, the suit that he causes all that destruction. He just wants to get out of it. Like just the different people that have their motivations. I really thought it was cool, but I could see where people could probably skip over that. Like you didn't have to listen to those recordings. You could just go into the lair and continue the story. But I kind of felt like it was a little rushed at the end. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will say I get what you're saying. So first off, I do have to say, I feel like Otto Octavius would have a lot more money for his research if he did not invest so much of his money in audio recording devices.
Yeah.
Because there was literally one at every single station. And it's like, dude, you have like 5 or 6 of these just laying around. Like, why are you spending all that money on it? But anyway, I'm not gonna harp on that. But
no, but I thought that too. I was like, how did he have all this time to discover? Of course, he didn't make these. At least, of course, his prosthetic discoveries didn't come to fruition by himself because he was busy doing this crazy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I could see that.
But shoot, I lost my train of thought.
Talk about Act 3, the boss fights, and the motive revelations.
Yep. So, yeah. Besides that little caveat, I was kind of relieved because I was like, oh no, now this is gonna be like I gotta catch all these villains one by one and get them back in the raft. And I was like, honestly, I don't want to face these guys again. So the fact when they basically teamed them up in groups of 2.
Yeah, I did like that.
I was kind of relieved in the fact, like, okay, I don't have to, especially like that one part where like they all, like it was like this screen of like all 6 of the bad guys in this one little block or whatever, and I was like, oh, am I gonna have to chase these guys down by one by one?
Right.
And I was like, okay, no, I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So
did you have a favorite boss fight of the? I think there were 2 or 3 different boss fights.
I would have to say,
if you had to pick one that you liked in particular.
I I would have to say the one with I think it was Electro and Vulture.
Yes,
I want to say it was.
That was mine too, man. I love that fight.
Just because you get to throw the missiles that Vulture shoots back at Electro and stuff. So, and that was always fun to just sort of sling those. Now the one with Scorpion and Rhino was kind of cool too, just because you had to like drop all those objects on
top of Rhino.
Yeah, in order to knock him out. But what was driving me nuts with honestly all of them was like with how much like I was having to web swing constantly, go around in circles and just keep moving.
If you stayed still too long, they definitely would take advantage of you. And I did a lot of dodging. But for me, I think the Electro and Vulture fight, I liked it not just because of the verticality of it. Like that one, you definitely had to swing around because they were up high in the air. But I loved the banter, like the Rocky references.
Oh,
like,
yeah, for sure.
Hey, Adrian. And because I forget which one. One of them's name is Adrian. I think it was...
That's
was
Vulture.
Yeah, Vulture's name was Adrian, and I loved the banter. It reminded me of the MCU movies where, Tom Holland's Spider-Man always brings up old movies, quote unquote. And so it kind of reminded me of that. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, for sure.
So once you, of course, gather up 5 of the Sinister Six, you then, of course, had the final showdown against Otto. And in this final showdown, he finally he reveals that he knew all along that you were Spider-Man, that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and pretty much that he would stop at nothing to bring down his arch rival, Osborn. And I thought this whole fight was very well done. I struggled at first because for some reason I just was trying to run around to fight Doc Ock, and then finally I realized I can just swing all around this top of this building using the poles, and then it became a pretty easy fight. But I really liked the transition into the up close and personal part of the fight where you're on the side of the building and they're kind of talking back and forth. The HUD disappears and it's just you like dodging him, shooting him with webs, punching him, going back and forth. They have that conversation. What did you think of that fight?
Well, first off, the anti-ox suit was pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah, it was sleek looking. Now, I will say, I don't feel like they explained to us enough what made it special. Like, he just went and he made a suit the same color as Doc Ock's arms. And I was like, so because they match, that makes it a good suit? Like, I didn't understand what was special about it.
It was just added strength, I guess, and resilience and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I guess that was the only thing about it, really.
But it was a sleek suit for sure.
Yeah. But so that was really cool. And obviously, the moment I saw the fact, the part where Ock would basically make the platform fire, I was like, okay, I need to swing around this whole time as much as possible.
Yeah.
And,
exactly.
I like boss fights where, yes, there's a challenge, but at the same time, like, I'm not, like, popping blood vessels, getting frustrated with the final boss. So it was very much like an enjoyable boss fight.
It was, for
final
sure.
boss fight to me. I will say this. Peter is horrible at keeping his identity a secret.
Oh, man, is he not the worst? Like, he's terrible at it. You'd figure after 8 years of practice that he would be a little better at hiding his identity, but they reveal by the end of the game that, like, pretty much everybody in his life knows he's Spider-Man. And there's like, we knew. Yeah, we knew you were Spider-Man. Yeah. It's like, what?
And he's all shocked about it. Like, you knew? You knew?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, they knew.
He's definitely worse in all the entertainment versions of Spider-Man for identity. He would definitely get his identity stolen. He would be the one to tell the Indian guy on the phone, here's my bank account information.
Mm-hmm.
So he beats Doc Ock. You save the day. You get the cure to the demon's breath to save a bunch of people. However, there's a catch. And I think here we get to the ultimate choice, and one of my favorite parts of the story is when Spider-Man has to choose between his Aunt May and the rest of the city, pretty much. This was a big feels moment. You get to the end, and the scientist that you've been working with says there's only enough of this to make either to heal your aunt or to make a cure for everybody, because it's going to take so many hours and she's not going to survive. And I don't know about you, but I definitely got, a little choked up during this part. I thought it was very well done.
So here's the bummer for me about this. I think it was you guys I told a while ago that I was bummed because it's like, man, something about the story for Spider-Man got spoiled for me accidentally, and I was very mad.
And it was this.
And it was the fact that Aunt May dies in the story, and I was like, oh, okay, that's annoying. So
yeah,
and when we got to that point where she was like lying in the hospital bed, I'm like, okay, so this is how she's gonna die.
This is how it's gonna happen. Yeah, that's a bummer.
And of course, Peter had to be the better man, and so he elects to not give Aunt May the anti serum.
Yeah.
And allows so many people to live, and unfortunately, Aunt May dies.
Yep.
Now, what I thought was interesting is the fact that while this is happening, and obviously the relationship with Peter and Mary Jane is kind of coming to a head and building back and all that kind of stuff. The way that they did the story with Miles Morales was kind of interesting.
It was.
It's kind of playing on their own little take on the Miles Morales character. Now, for those who may or may not have read the comic storyline, they actually have, kind of like DC has their like alternate universes, their Elseworlds. Yep. Marvel has the same concept. The main universe, what DC would call Earth 1, is it's called the 616 universe.
Right.
In the Marvel universe, and that's the main canon with the Spider-Man we know. But then they came out with the Ultimate storyline, and in the Ultimate storyline, Peter actually, and spoilers I guess for anybody who hasn't read these comics, but I
think it's okay at this point.
Peter gets into a fight with a whole bunch of his enemies, and it all sort of comes to a head with a fight between him and the Green Goblin, in which the Goblin ends up killing Spider-Man, and then this is how Miles' story begins to come to fruition with Peter being Spider-Man being dead, Peter being revealed as Spider-Man, and Peter dying, and then it gives rise to a new version of Spider-Man to come up in Miles Morales. And so it's interesting that Peter, becomes a mentor to Miles with the mask on, with the mask off. And then it all comes to a head when we find out throughout the duration of the story that Norman Osborn has had some test spiders in a secret room he's had. And one of those spiders manages to escape through Mary Jane,
on Mary Jane's shoulder. And I'll tell you, there was a split second where I thought that spider was going to bite Mary Jane. I was like, is it going to bite Mary Jane? Are they going to make like a Spider Girl right here, right now? And then I was like, no, because the spider still has to bite. I knew a spider had to bite Miles Morales. There's no reason to have Miles if he's not going to get bitten by the spiders. So I definitely saw it coming, but there was a split second where I thought maybe it would bite MJ too.
Yeah, I was like, why would they do that? That's kind of weird.
That's kind of weird, right?
Yeah,
have a spider couple, a super spider couple. That'd be weird.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
But obviously it ends up biting Miles, and Miles gets spider powers, as we see.
Yep, which they reveal. Yeah, in the after credits scene. Also at the end of the game, spoilers, as this is a spoiler cast, MJ and Peter Parker get back together. They kiss. Oh, how sweet! But it's the after credit scenes that definitely won it for me. That I thought were very interesting. There were two of them, and the first one is the one you started talking about. Is Miles Morales reveals his spider powers. Now I thought it was really funny how they did it. They kind of played off of that kind of pubescent issue, like I have man problems I need to show you, and Peter's all uncomfortable.
Oh, you're at the right age now. Where
yeah, exactly.
These things will start changing, and you'll start growing hair. And you're like, nope, that's not.
No, that's not it. And then he just all of a sudden like jumps to the ceiling. Miles does, and then Peter doesn't say anything, and then he just jumps to the ceiling. Now, I thought Miles would have had more of a shocked look on his face, but evidently he also knew that Peter was already Spider-Man. Because he doesn't really react. He just kind of looks at him like, yeah, see, now we're both Spider guys. And, so I think that will definitely come into play. I think Insomniac is building up for their second game to make it very interesting. And we'll talk about that a little bit more after we talk about the second after-credit scene, which I also thought was very, very interesting. Of course, we get to see a little more of Osborn, and we see Osborn in his office, the same office where they reveal the Green Goblin grenades that you see if you're exploring as MJ and looking around at different things on the desk.
Pumpkin bombs.
Pumpkin bombs. I think they're just like purple with silver, so they don't look like pumpkins, which it's good. That would have been a little weird if they were pumpkin bombs. But they also reveal that this entire time that Harry Osborn has been in a stasis tank this entire game in the secret office of Mr. Osborn. And he is in a stasis tank because he's sick, which they reveal during the game. And not only is he in a stasis tank, but he's covered in a black goop that to me can't be anything but venom.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they were going with that. I don't know if that's the symbiotic type stuff. I'm not. It could be, I guess, but that would just be a weird direction to go.
So my guess is that along with this whole Devil's Breath, so they reveal in the game that Devil's Breath played into Martin Lee having the Mr. Negative powers. They kind of reveal that sometimes Devil's Breath kills you, sometimes Devil Breath gives you like crazy powers or does weird things. I think they're going to be doing a more grounded symbiotic. It's not going to be a symbiote like in the sense that it's like an alien or it has its own sentience, like it thinks and all that stuff. But I think they're making some version of Venom that's going to play into more whatever it attaches to, kind of like Mr. Negative. It brings out your anger. That's my guess. And so I think it's very much something that's going to make the Venom villain that's going to fight Spider-Man. But I don't think necessarily that it's going to be Harry. I think it's just going to start with Harry, and then it could go to Brock or some later character, more traditional Venom character that Spider-Man's going to fight. Now, of course, maybe it'll attach to Spider-Man, but I thought it was very interesting that they combined Harry with the Venom symbiote. I thought that was crazy.
I mean, and I guess that's just where my mind was going, because I know ultimately, where things normally go with Norman and with Harry.
Right.
I just sort of figured that was some sort of experimental thing that they were trying in order to genetically heal Harry, and obviously it reaches out and hits the glass to try to grab Norman, and kind of alluding to, okay, are we going to get a Green Goblin somehow?
I think we definitely
next?
are. I think, yeah, for sure we're getting Green Goblin.
So I didn't take that as Venom. I could see where it could go that way.
Yeah.
I just don't know if they really would go there.
So where do you think they will go from this? Given all the information we have, do you have any future predictions where they might go, what they might do?
I think for the next Spider-Man game, they're gonna go Ultimate Spider-Man, because they're building up some sort of a Green Goblin storyline. I think ultimately, halfway through, Peter will die at some point, and you'll be Miles Morales Spider-Man, and develop that story.
I can see that,
because it just seems like we're the logical progression for it.
Yeah, because Peter has been Spider-Man for so long, and it makes sense that they I feel like they told a very complete story for Peter. Like, you didn't see his origin story, but we don't really need to at this point. We got to see Miles Morales' origin story. One thing that I think they're gonna, they show Doc Ock get put into jail, and him kind of making a face of like like sadness, and then that sadness kind of transitions to I'm gonna get you. Like without him saying "I'll get you, Spider-Man," he was saying it with his face. I wonder
sure.
if they'll use the storyline. I don't know if you read the comics where Doc Ock switched his consciousness with Peter Parker, switched bodies with him.
Yeah, the Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah, I wonder if they would go that route and kill Peter Parker off that way, and then you almost have like a Spider-Man versus Spider-Man, because then Doc Ock has Spider-Man's body, and then you play as Miles Morales and then kind of fight, Peter Parker's body with Doc Ock's brain. I thought that would be, because I don't feel like they're going to throw away, I don't think Doc Ock's relationship with Peter is a one-off. I don't think it's just with this Spider-Man and then it's done, and they're just going to automatically go to Harry Osborn, Venom, Green Goblin, all that. I think that the Doc Ock relationship is going to continue, and I think it would be interesting if it went that direction, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, certainly a direction they could go in. They could try to tell their own tale. They could try to tell the original Miles Morales tale, the story where his uncle is a villain called the Prowler, and it's that whole story of him basically coming up against his uncle and all that kind of stuff. It just depends on where they decide to go. It was so interesting how Insomniac basically kind of took bits and pieces and used it to create their own little story. Just to make it interesting and to make it something that not necessarily people had seen before. Like, I like the idea, the story of, Harry went off to Europe. For this big thing. But it turns out Harry never even left the United States. Harry never even left New York.
Nope, he was there the whole time.
Yeah, and that he couldn't tell Peter or Mary Jane about it. So that was kind of interesting. And they kind of played off on that on the Amazing Spider-Man movies. It's a very similar kind of thing, except Norman, I think, had some sort of degenerative disease.
Yeah.
And then Harry started getting it as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of similar in that way.
Yeah, that's true. I did think of that because I had just recently watched actually The Amazing Spider-Man 2 on Netflix, just because I was like, I know these aren't like the best, but at the same time I kind of wanted I actually kind of liked Amazing Spider-Man 1 with Lizard, and I I kind of liked some aspects of Andrew Garfield's take on Spider-Man. And it wasn't 2 wasn't too bad, but I felt, man, that the whole Osborn storyline and the actors for that and the way they portrayed Goblin and all that, I did not enjoy that in those movies, but they kind of rushed and they got a little too cackly for my taste. And like, I'm Green Goblin. All of a sudden he goes from like,
I'm evil now.
Yeah, I'm all of a sudden evil. Like, okay, you Raimi's Spider-Man, the original trilogy, that Goblin one was much more believable than the one they made in Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, Power Ranger Green Goblin.
Oh yeah, Power Ranger Green Goblin. I didn't say it was perfect, and by no stretch of the imagination do I think Spider-Man 3 is a movie that I'll ever watch again. But it still was better than the other one. But we digress. Back to wrap things up with Spider-Man on PS4. Did you have any final thoughts on Spider-Man story, game, reflections?
I think this is the ultimate, for, I guess, pun intended, I guess, in this case. This is the ultimate Spider-Man game, honestly. They did a great job, just making a fun, immersive world and pulling on the lore, all the story beats of the Spider-Man canon and all that kind of stuff. And, it was very much an enjoyable game. And I'm glad they decided to put this type of game out. That's honestly where it's at. It's I mentioned on the podcast, it's my game of the year.
Yep.
So yeah, well done Insomniac for making an awesome Spider-Man game, immersive game, great story, great visuals. It was awesome to be in New York and see a lot of the landmarks you did. Mm-hmm. Although one thing I kind of wish they hadn't strayed away from, but I guess I can see why they didn't put it in there. obviously the new World Trade Center is in it. You can jump on top of it. And that was another cool thing was, taking pictures at different landmarks too. I should probably mention that.
Yeah, that was
where you could go to like the Sanctum Sanctorum and Avengers Tower and all that kind of stuff. But just the fact that like the 9/11 memorial wasn't there. Kind of stuff, they kind of omitted that, which I guess makes sense because they don't want Spider-Man jumping around on the 9/11 memorial. But at the same time, I think they could have made something really cool about that, and so. Yeah, but that's true. That's nitpicky, very nitpicky. Right. That. But other than that, it was very much a beautiful, very well thought out New York, and even the fun little things like fast travel, going on the subway train, and the fact that you could get a a trophy just for riding the subway train a certain amount of times and unlocking all those things. It's very well thought out. So yeah, big kudos to you, Insomniac, for making a great Spider-Man game. True
that. I would say after finishing the main story, I have no doubts that I will go back, get the platinum, and I will most likely turn on some podcasts and just kind of swing through the city, do those side quests, get those collectibles, get the platinum, but I will enjoy every second of it. This game overall has definitely entered into my top 10 GOAT video games. Just the greatest of all time for me. Even if, however God of War finishes out about 2/3 of the way through that story, no matter where that falls out, Spider-Man will still stay in as one of my favorite games of all time, and definitely my favorite superhero game of all time. It was so fun, yet it had a lot of heart. I like the more lighthearted, the kind of jump back and forth between lighthearted and a little bit of darkness, a little bit of difficulty. It was just well done and incredible. I really can't think of anything that I didn't enjoy. Every aspect of it. Sure. Had something that seemed really, really well rounded, and it felt like every collectible had a purpose. It was a great adventure for sure. So
absolutely.
All right, man. Well, I think that's all we have for today. This was fun. Great first Spoilercast to do. I think maybe here in a few weeks we'll consider doing another Spoilercast about a certain God of War. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll surprise you. Boy. But I'm Lucas Ham, and then to my left is Marc Boucher. It's been a pleasure to have this time with you, brother, and to talk a little bit about Spider-Man. You have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whatever time of the day it is. God bless you all. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you join us again in the future. You can find us on Twitter at the GMG Podcast. And God bless you, and talk to you soon.
It's webbing time.
Yeah, Excelsior and ciao, my brothers and sisters.
1, 2, 3, 4.